Hello, and welcome back to our discussion of industrialization in Europe from 1750 to 1914. So again, we're looking at the historical context, and this is part two. And so let's look at the learning objectives. What we're trying to do here is understand the context. So what is happening at the time that's going to influence industrialization, the Industrial Revolution. And we're going to make connections between industrialization in the 19th century with our previous units. Here, we're going to be talking more specifically about the Reformation, and then work on explaining the circumstances that help explain why the Industrial Revolution is going to begin in England. So, Reformation and the economy. So you got to kind of think back a little bit to a long time ago when we were discussing the Protestant Reformation in Europe. So one of the things that we can say in a very real way is that the Industrial Revolution is a result of some of the changes that happened during the Protestant Reformation. So one of the biggest things was that there was a huge amount of political change. We now start having the coalescing of nation states as rulers became more independent, separating themselves from the control of the church, and we start having increasing competition between these states. You know, the real idea of these states happens during the Protestant Reformation. And we have this competition between them, and the economy becomes a very important part of, one, representing their individualism, and representing the power of the country. One of the things you need to have is this political influence, and that political influence outside of the borders of your state and the ability to protect yourself comes out of your wealth. And we start having this idea, we talked about mercantilism before as being one of these results, and now mercantilism is even bigger. In order to have wealth, in order to have power, you need to have wealth. And so there is a huge amount of competition and the development of the economy. There is this application of Protestant religious ideas to secular life. One of the things we said previously is that the Reformation itself happens as a result of the application of secular ideas of the Renaissance into religious ideas. And now it's going to come full circle, and these Protestant religious ideas are going to go into secular life. And these included things like, the Protestants emphasized the ability of people to reason. And that means that and also to use to the fullest potential all of the abilities that God gave you. And so making money is one of those abilities. So by maximizing your abilities, like God gave you a gift, you show respect to God's gift by using it to its fullest potential. And therefore making money is, in a way, being a good Christian in the Protestant sense. Also, one of the things is having all of this money, not necessarily living luxuriously, but having money shows that God favored you. So it's not like luck. You don't become rich because you have luck, but because God is showing your favor. So the more money you have, in a way, is the more showing of God's favor. Another important thing that is happening at this time is that you have this Protestant focus on education because you have to be able to read in order to read the Bible, and that means you need an education. And that education was for both women and men. But you now have a rise of an educated group of people. And that educated group of people means that you have more people who can, say, read the classics and come up with engineering ideas. You have more people who can be involved in industry and so on and so forth. You have an educated class which kind of acts as the vanguard or the leaders of some of these ideas that's going to be important to industrialization. You also have this freeing of the economy from religious control. So previously in Catholicism, the morality of religion extended not just in your personal life, but to all aspects of your life, which included the economy. And so there were these ideas that profiteering, making profits off of people was bad, lending money with interest was bad. So now, so what they're saying is that like people didn't do some of these activities for religious reasons. And now with Protestantism, there is a separation of work and religion so that the morality is different in these areas. So you don't need the morality of religion in the economic life. And so this is going to nurture ideas of capitalism. There will be money being lent for investments and stuff. And additionally, some of the Protestant faiths encourage people to be thrifty. That is, don't waste money. And that means that there is more money than that people can use to invest in machinery and exploration. So in total, what we're saying is these Protestant religious ideas kind of provided both the human capital and the capital, the money capital, for the investment, as well as changing the way people viewed the economy. Of course, you have a huge amount of social instability in Europe as well. And that social instability leads to a lot of people migrating out. And that also means that people are going to be using their money to invest, to explore other places. So a lot of these Protestant groups were oppressed, were persecuted within Europe. And when you have these new places being discovered from the age of exploration, then people would pool their money and establish corporations in order to go and settle other places. So this image we have here it's obviously from somebody's mind, but the idea of the Puritans leaving England after the Glorious Revolution, after the English Civil War. They were heavily persecuted, and they left England to establish a colony in the Americas. And so this meant that they were still English citizens. They still had to send taxes back to England, and they were providing a lot of the raw materials into the English economy that is going to help toward industrialization. And this happens in a lot of different places. So you have this creation of even more wealth that can be put into the economic system. Here we have this handy dandy map graph thingy-majiggy. And so you see from Europe the millions of people that went to various parts of the non-European world, into the Americas, North and South America, into Africa, into Australia. And so altogether, math, that adds to a whole lot of million people. And kind of tying in together Europe with these other parts of the world in terms of economy and resources that then feed into industrialization. And here's a handy dandy chart that summarizes a bunch of the stuff that we're talking about in terms of the Industrial Revolution. You can see where some of this is coming from. If you look at the left, it's talking about it says accumulation and store of technological information in the agrarian era. So we're talking about the pre-industrial era, that is advances in navigation and shipbuilding, which allows the movement of people. It also allows the ability to bring resources into Europe to fuel industrialization, as well as the printing press and the spread of all of these various ideas that people will then use to build upon to develop their own ideas, right? We have the importance of the discovery of the quote-unquote New World, that is North and South America, and all of the ways that it contributes to industrialization and different aspects. And then at the bottom, we have the success of the Protestant Reformation and the impact that then there has. Keep in mind that all of this stuff is interrelated. All right, you use it to develop your analysis, you use different parts of it, but it's all interrelated. And now we're going to talk about population growth and pressure. Under pressure. So looking at our handy dandy chart, we have this steady population increase in England, Scotland, and Wales from 1801 to 1901. And so by the end of the century, we have 3 times the number of people living in Great Britain as there was a century earlier. So this is massive. One of the biggest things that starts happening at this time in terms of population is, if we go back again to what we spoke about in terms of the Black Plague, millions of people died. And so in a real way, it eased the population pressure. So by the time we get to the 1700s, population has recovered. So more and more people are being born, and population has recovered from this massive reduction of the Black Death. And so now you have this need for greater resources. And this includes more food, more clothing, more housing, more shoes, everything that people need to live. And so one of the first places that this industrialization is going to happen is within the agricultural sector, because the most basic thing that we need is more food, and that has to basically be addressed. And of course, as we said, more finished goods. And also at this time, you have more and more people moving from the farm to the city. And this happens as a result of increasing industrialization, but also as a result of government policies. And once you have people no longer living off the land, that means that the land has to provide for them. And so you have this pressure on the systems that is going to result in lots of experimentation in agriculture, in engineering, and so on and so forth. And so we see in this experimentation the ideas of the scientific revolution. All right, we see in this experimentation the ideas that are coming in from the massive exploration. So this pressure is fueling a lot of experimentation, and this experimentation helps bring us to all of these new inventions and ideas that underscore the Industrial Revolution. And then finally, not really finally, I was just messing with you, we get to the beginnings in England. This you have already discussed. So consider using the information discussed in this video so far, the Protestant Reformation, and your own knowledge from previous units, and the other video that you watched on industrialization in England, explain why industrialization began there. So I'm not looking for a repeat of what the original video told you, but you analyzing and pulling things together. So to conclude, one of the things when we're looking at the Industrial Revolution is to consider the time, right? The 19th century was incredibly revolutionary. There is so much happening, and we spoke about this previously. So this is a period of massive, massive change. It all kind of is building up from the 14th century. And we have these Enlightenment ideas that are being developed. And these Enlightenment ideas change the traditional relationship between government and the people. There is this idea of shifting power from the elites, from the government, from the aristocracy, and putting more of it into the hands of the people. So we have political and social change as a result of these ideas. At the same time, we have the industrialization. And we're also going to have political and social change. This industrialization is going to change where and how people live. And in doing that, it's going to also push for change in terms of government as well. So this is a really massive time period. And let's not forget that we still are discussing some of the instabilities that resulted from the Protestant Reformation. It doesn't just end, and all of these things are kind of interrelating to produce the industrialization that we see. Which brings us to the surprise! Here's the question. Why did the man put his money in the freezer? You got it? You got it? Because he wanted cold, hard cash. All right, guys, you're welcome. And that ends this presentation of the context of the Industrial Revolution in Europe.